Jen is at the home of Andrew Johnstone, a family of 4, and lives in a semi-detached Victorian house in Portobello, and he's installed solar evacuated tubes on his south-facing roof, and we're going to ask him some questions on how he installed it, how did he find out about it, the cost, and how he uses it.
Well, I think initially it was just a way of looking at green renewable energy, looking at a way of using less gas and bringing the bills down, and just looking at the most effective way that we could achieve that. And initially that seemed to be using a solar heating system. I would say the total cost of the installation was about £5,000, but obviously I was able to get a grant to help with the installation of the system, and so the cost to me ended up being about £3,500. It felt like a sort of sensible sum. I was reasonably comfortable with the costs. It's still obviously quite an expensive thing to do. I felt the proportion of grant was quite good, and at that sort of capital cost, the returns over a number of years, or we would see the repayments come through to us faster than perhaps with some of the other technologies, which are more expensive. The renewable heat incentives have sort of come to the fore, and I'd certainly be looking to key into those as well, as and when that's a possibility. And I just knew through my work, I knew that there were bodies such as the Energy Savings Trust to go to who administered grant for such installations. So I obviously explored their website and the implications of getting a grant, and as part of that system, in order to qualify for the grant, you had to use equipment and contractors that were sort of approved by the Energy Savings Trust, an approved installer. So that was really kind of the starting point if you wanted to qualify for the grant payment. So I narrowed it down to the people, almost like a one-stop shop thing, the people I knew who could advise me and carry out the installation. I didn't want 2 separate strands going. So I narrowed it down to them. I looked at, as I say, at individual websites, and I rang 2 or 3 of them up to initially have a conversation with them about it and just get a feel for whether they were the right people to come and work at the house. The ones I did look at were Wiesemann, because that was a name that was kind of known to me, but that's obviously a German technology, but there's Spanish, there's Italian, there's all sorts of other ones. And then when I ended up discussing what appropriate systems to use with the contractor I was speaking to, that was also one of the systems that he had used and recommended and was familiar with. The chap who I eventually got to do the work was a guy called Hugh Evans, who runs a company called Latent Heat Limited. When he turned up to do the work, I mean, the main focus was obviously getting the tubes up onto the roof. We had to replace our existing hot water cylinder, and then because we were getting the everything taken up to mains pressure, there was a mechanical pump on one of the showers we had to have removed so that everything operated successfully. The trust had asked that you achieve certain other more effective measures, such as increasing insulation in the loft or using energy-saving bulbs throughout the house. Obviously, being a traditional house, I couldn't introduce insulation into the walls, but again, that was an accepted part of the fact that it was an older house. So yes, there were conditions that you had to achieve. And I was doing an extension to the house anyway, so I made it part and parcel of the planning application for that. But even if it had been a standalone scheme just for the tubes, I would have needed to apply for planning permission. We haven't changed our use substantially at the moment because it's still quite a new system for us, so we're still getting to grips with understanding if we need to chop and change things. But all I know is that when it's been hot and sunny and so we certainly get a full tank of hot water, and it would be possible to turn the boiler off and not have to use that. But obviously it just depends slightly on the weather, so we've tended to leave the boiler running as it was before, coming on a bit in the morning and a bit in the evening, and then if the system would only use the boiler's heat if it needed it, if it's been, you know, not such a nice day. But if it's been a hot sunny day, then we've had a tank full of water, hot water. Although I wouldn't profess to be an expert or anything, I do, you know, have a little bit of knowledge about some of the systems and what alternatives are available to you, and I think that helps. But if you're coming to it cold, I can understand how it's quite a daunting task to understand and to take all the different options on board, and what's the right way to go and the right thing to do, and how is it going to affect what you've got in the house already and things. And I was perhaps a little less perturbed by some of that. It has become more prevalent, especially in the last few years. I would say, although some of these technologies have been around for a little bit longer, it's really only in the last few years that they've come to the fore. And we've noticed a few more clients asking questions about solar heating and so on and so forth. But it would actually, a lot of the impetus sometimes comes from us. We would, depending on the nature of the project, we would suggest these avenues as something to be considered if it's of interest to the client.